Hey, what's happening, everybody? Well, you know what? Once again, as is becoming my tagline, right? I've got my coffee, and of course, I have my co-host. It's actually good that you're here, right? When I didn't have to try to do the solo thing to start us out, but we also have visions.
You're listening to Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
All right, hello, everybody. I'm Eric Vansel,
I'm Daryl Sanders.
and we're your hosts for the show. So, Visions Episode 6. Now, I have to tell you, here's the funny thing about it. Now, for those of you guys who are following along, everybody knows that, in the beginning, I think it's safe to say that we had a less than enthusiastic reaction to the show. You more so right from the get-go. I mean, you're just like, right out of the gate, with episode 1, you're just like, you know what? How many of these do we have to do? And for me, I mean, there were certain things. I mean, certainly I would say that overall I've been sharing your less than enthusiastic opinion as well. But I think depending on it, like on the episodes, after a while, it was kind of like we both tended to have the same basic view, I think, on some of them. Episode 1, I think, is the only one where we really differed because I think it's mostly because I saw more good in what it was. It wasn't necessarily that I disagreed with a lot of your points on that one, but that would definitely be a fun episode to go back and rewatch, even for us, because I think we were totally caught by surprise. Yeah. Just like, ooh, what is this?
Not knowing what we're looking at.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I mean, I have a feeling that was probably a really interesting episode for even us to go back and rewatch. Ronaldo, of course, is back there. He says, "Hello, guys. Let the hate flow through you." So apparently, Ronaldo didn't really expect us to like this episode much. Because I remember he was even saying something to that effect, right? Like he was just all like, "Oh boy," when you guys hit episode 6. Because remember, 5 I think was his second favorite, and 7 is his favorite, and we're in between those. In an episode that's called TOB1, and essentially,
that's just cheesy as out the gate. TOB1, oh my God, really?
Yeah, and of course later on, and I mean this is what was so funny is that he's later referred to as Toby, which of course brought back the entire Family Guy Roots parody for me, where the one dude's like, "Sometimes I spell Toby with an I," and of course I don't know why I just couldn't get that out of my head. But here's what's interesting, and I'll sort of kick things off, maybe not too much, but a little bit, in the sense of, and this is kind of a thing that I've often said, where it really depends on your mood and just, I think, your overall state of mind when you go into something. So when I first saw this episode, I think I watched it, because remember, we were supposed to do this last week, actually. So I think I watched it for the first time last Sunday, like I usually do. I try to do it about the day before. And I mean, I was just like, oh man, I hate this episode. I just really
don't like it.
I have violent feelings. I mean, I enjoyed the cleverness of it, because essentially it's almost like a Japanese anime version of Pinocchio in the Star Wars universe.
Yep.
If I had to sum it up,
that's exactly what I was thinking. Like word for word, man. You bravo.
That's almost exactly what it is. So when you actually take all that into consideration, it's really interesting. Now I did. Oh, by the way, Dwight joined us, and he said he was sideswiped by this episode because
that's hurt.
And I have a feeling that when we see the next episode, we're probably going to even feel more so like this, because this is a really strange episode to drop in between these, episode 5 and 7. Just because of the overall tone, and especially how good 5 was.
Mm-hmm.
But I do have to say, though, that I think, and I don't think it was because I watched it again, as much as I think I was more in the mood for what I was going to get. Because right out the gate, I enjoyed the animation part. I thought, once again, it had more of an older, kind of like an older Disney cartoonish meets anime style to it.
Absolutely.
Which I think, of course, was maybe furthering the whole Pinocchio thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, they even made that dude look like Geppetto a little bit, I mean...
Yep.
They were really trying to hammer that home. So I kind of enjoyed that. But, I mean, even though, again, it was... Yeah, it's not going to go down in history. It's one of the best episodes, I don't think.
Yeah.
And there's some problems with it. And there's some stuff where I was just kind of like my suspension of disbelief, even though, I get it. I'm watching a cartoon about, like, space wizards, but still. The suspension of disbelief was kind of hard. I'll go into that a little bit later as we're discussing the episode. But while I don't think it was as bad as I initially... Because like I said, I was just like, oh, man. I barely got through it the first time. Where I was just... I swear, if I didn't have to review it, I probably wouldn't have even finished it. That's how I felt when I first saw it. But I don't know, I got a little bit more into the spirit of it. So what about you? I kind of been monopolizing this, so.
No, man, it's cool. I think the more you talk, the less I have to.
Yeah, I was going to say, in this one, it's sort of like, you know what, man, I'll just kind of be here and be in the other box.
Yeah,
I'll fill that other box so you don't have to change the graphics or anything, but
yeah. Oh my God.
This is not making you more of a Visions fan, I don't think.
Here's the deal. I like where they were trying to go with it. And I only have really one glaring problem. I mean, it's one glaring problem that just keeps reoccurring. That's what my thing was, is that I really didn't have a whole lot of issue with the episode, except for one, well, maybe two things, but it just kept repeating itself over and over to the point where it was just like, okay, stop it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just wanted them to stop. It's one of those type of, it's almost like someone is like endlessly just jabbing you with something, and you just like, okay, just knock it off. I thought the story was cool and interesting. Animation was good. It did take me into a place of old Disney, like old Pinocchio, Peter Pan, those type of, that you could also find on Disney Plus.
Yeah, exactly. There's no accident on that one.
Yeah, so I was okay with it. It was actually kind of, and I didn't pick that up until the second time I watched it. The first time I was just kind of more like horrified, and then like the second time
Well, you kind of had the same reaction I did then.
Yeah,
a
but
little
like
bit.
The second time I watched it, I had a chance to actually digest it. The second time I'm like, okay, yeah, but I think it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be.
Right.
But it wasn't. It had good moments, but
yeah,
then it went right. But before you could enjoy the good moment, here it comes again, and it just shoots you right back down.
I mean, if I were gonna use one word to describe it too, I would probably use the word disjointed, because it's sort of like you could tell the story. It wasn't like some of the other episodes that we criticized where we're like, I don't even know what this is about.
Right.
There were some definite episodes, or maybe there were some episodes where I'm trying to think, like, in particular. Well, even the first one, it sort of had a straightforward storyline, but it was done in a very surrealistic way. And that's similar to this in a way, even though I think the storyline was obviously more clear, as we've said a couple of times already. It was essentially the retelling of Pinocchio in the Star Wars universe. But it just kind of had a disjointed thing, because even though the story was fairly linear, which is unlike a lot of the stories in the show, it basically just kind of had these scenes that were weird, you know? Like it had these really kind of esoteric sort of things happening in it.
For me, it was too, no pun intended, goofy. I think that's the way I would just, if I had to give it a word, it was just goofy to
Mhm.
me. Especially like I said, coming off 5 was like a really good episode. And it's like, okay, like you could see this in the Star Wars universe. This is almost like, this felt like something like something a dad would read to his 3-year-old, like a fairy tale book. That's kind of
Yeah.
what it reminded me of, like a
Well,
fairy
and
tale.
and again, I think that
And
one
it,
of the things that we have to think about though is the fact that unlike any other Disney Plus Star Wars series, they actually dropped all the episodes at once.
mhm,
And we brought this up pretty heavily early on when we were reviewing this show, is that we're almost taking it like like your Mandalorian and your other more, I guess, traditional show, to where even though it's episodic in nature, there's still a common thread that runs throughout the entire series. Whereas this literally is done by completely different studios, and it's really more of just, I guess, like a collection of episodes. It's not, nothing really relates, even
mhm.
though, and everybody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that dude from the first episode might pop up again a little bit later on. I mean, there's some tie-in, I think, but for the most part, these episodes are really made to be looked at individually and completely
Mhm.
independently from the other ones.
Yeah, all a la carte. Yeah.
Right. So I think that sometimes what ends up happening is, we sit there and say something like, well, they're putting this in between episode 5 and 7, which is kind of a weird placement for this. And definitely, I think it hurts it if you watch this in order. But I almost wonder sometimes that this series isn't meant to, you're just kind of like looking at the titles and go, oh, that one sounds interesting. And that might be 8. And then you might go to 2. And you know what I mean? It's like you're
Well, yeah, I
watching them
mean,
completely out of order.
yeah, they're this particular series, Visions, puts you in the mindset of you're, like you say, you're watching different stories told within the Star Wars umbrella, if you will.
Hmm.
Um, but like you said, they were never meant to be like, there's never designed to be any connective tissue between between them all. And I think what you're saying is that, like, see, if you kind of had like your weaker episodes and then you gradually build up to your good, really, really good ones, that's what you're more so like. That's why we say it's weird, because it's like, okay, and it's almost no different than how we say with Mandalorian sometimes, because you will have like a really good episode and then we get this filler episode where it's just like, ugh, like, no, we just had this really good breakthrough in this last episode, and then now you're going us to talk about this frog lady or something like that.
Well,
Like, we
and I
don't
think
want to,
and the problem with
you
something
know.
like that is that you're so invested in whatever the main storyline is. And the problem is that unlike a show like, say, when 24 was on, because that show was notorious, where they'd have like 2 or 3
Mhm.
episodes where you're just like, come on, get back to the main storyline.
Story.
It's you're
Yeah.
dealing with all these subplots and everything, and they're the exact definition of a filler episode. But the difference is that in a show like that, you'd have like 22 episodes. Whereas
Yeah.
these, you only have 8 or 10, and you're just kind of like, okay, you have 8 or 10 episodes that are maybe 30 to 40 minutes. You don't have that kind of time to waste.
Well, yeah, and like you said, they're not designed. They're designed to actually just be kind of like one-offs, basically, and just what if we did something like this in Star Wars? What if we did something like that?
Sure.
And it's cool, it's fine. But the thing that really bothered me about this particular episode, and I'll
Yeah, let's
just
get
go
into
ahead
that
and
a little bit because
I'll just break the ice here.
naturally, I mean, the chats are filling up, but I mean, I think this is a good time for us to maybe go through its problems.
Yeah, definitely. So the biggest thing for me is that while I get it, they were trying to be creative and take a different spin on it. It just didn't land well because it doesn't fit within the Star Wars franchise. And this is what I mean is that you have this basically this little boy who has these dreams of being uh, a Jedi Knight, but he's a droid.
I know.
And so the mere fact that the thing is a droid completely just eradicates everything Star Wars is, because in the sense of what he's trying to do. Like, it'd be different if it was like, okay, if he wanted to be like 3PO or R2 and he wanted to go on these adventures with the Jedi and like, yeah, I want to be able to be by their side like 3PO or R2D2. I could hang with that. That would make more sense. But you're telling me like, oh, I have a dream. You're a droid. You don't dream. Oh, I have this feeling. What feelings? You're a droid. You don't feel. Like I want to be this Jedi Knight. And it's just kind of like, okay, it's a droid.
Well,
It's a
and
droid.
here's the problem. And this is actually good that you brought this up first, because I basically was feeling the same way. I won't go as far as to say that it was outside the realm of Star Wars, though, because it was supposed to be. It was supposed to be in the sense that what they're doing, and this is where I think the problem is that you bring up. It's problem number one, is because if you look at the Pinocchio story, they're going to be like, well, it's a wooden puppet. Wooden puppets don't feel or dream or anything like that either. You have to accept that that's the whimsical part of this whole thing. And I can understand that. But again, I think there's context. What they should have done was shown more of the creation of this thing. I mean, they kind of did a little bit, because it sort of is brought to life and, it does its little flip around itself. And
Yeah.
you could get the vibe,
Yeah, I mean, I understand what they're trying to do, but see, the difference between, once again, Pinocchio and Star Wars is that for Pinocchio, there was no precedence.
Right.
It was just Pinocchio.
Well, it's also
it wasn't
like basically a fairy tale. See, that's the problem. It's kind of like you're saying,
that's what I'm saying.
There's all these decades of pretty much establishing, world building, all this stuff, to where we kind of have these rules, and it's hard to take us out of that and make it more fantasy, because that's the problem, right? It's more
super fantasy at that point.
Yeah,
like, it's not even
exactly.
Just, like with the four, like, okay, yes, it's fantasy, but it's kind of believable. It's like, okay, well, what if there was like, I mean, people have talked about this, about telekinesis. Like, okay, some people believe they can be telekinetic, or we only use a certain portion of our brain. But if we to unlock, let's just say even 60% of our brain capacity, we could do stuff like Jedi and pick up stuff with our brain, our minds, and do all that type of stuff, because we only use what 5 to 10% of it. Okay, once again, you can play on that from a certain scientific. That's why it's science fantasy, because it's like you can kind of apply some science to it, but not really.
Well, the problem is, and I think that this is what you're talking about, is that it's violating its own rules.
Exactly.
It's one thing to violate actual science, right? But it's violating the rules that were established within this franchise.
Exactly. And that was my biggest thing, is because it's like, oh, when he's trying to explain to him the force, and he's just like, oh, what's it? And I noticed they left this little bit out, because he's trying to explain it, and he says, oh, the force is everywhere. It's in all things. No. All living things. Yeah. Like, you left that little minute part out.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, well, you got to make it work, right? But here's the thing, though. And this, I could sort of get past that. I mean, I could more or less understand, okay, this is Pinocchio in the Star Wars universe. So you have to bend a little bit of the franchise's rules for this thing. But it was a lot of the stuff that was happening around it. I mean, one thing that I did appreciate, I'll put this out there first. I did like the fact that it, even though it was this fantasy, colorful, kind of outside, it almost reminded me of the look of Star Wars Resistance in a little bit. But I appreciated that because they had the R2 units and everything acted like they normally would. Mm-hmm. You had that, I don't know, Inquisitor or whatever it was. Yeah. You know, basically the Jedi Hunter, right? That felt Star Warsy. They used when the TIE, I'm not even sure what model.
Oh, that. Yeah, I think it was sweet though.
It was cool, but what I liked is that the sound effects were pretty much the classic type sound effects. So, unlike some of the other ones that tend to try to go a little bit outside of Star Wars, this one was taking more of an outside super fantasy concept and actually placing it though within the Star Wars universe to the point that it felt Star Wars-ish enough for me that I knew that, okay, this is kind of a weird, bizarro take, but there was some Star Wars elements in there that maintain the familiar. Well, there's a couple of big things, though, that I just had issues with that kind of took me out of it a little bit. Number one, when he was like, okay, you need a kyber crystal, so, you know, you got to go down on this planet and look for a kyber crystal. And you basically get this little montage of him going it's like, really, dude? This planet would have to be really small. And then, you know, of course he goes, well, you know, the basement, I haven't really checked there yet. I'm thinking, did you really check everywhere on that planet? Really?
Well, not only that, I mean, to echo, well, not echo, but to piggyback off of that, you know, it's like, okay, well, he couldn't find it. So then he's like, well, you got to use the Force. Okay. Here's the thing. He doesn't even know you're a Jedi Master yet. So you're telling, like, he has no training. Like, how you just expect him to find this thing? Let's just say, you know, it's not like he's tapped into it before he knows what the Force feels like, he doesn't know. And then on top of this, it's like, okay, which even made it more ridiculous, of course, when he gets to fight this whole Jedi Hunter thing. And all of a sudden, you know, the guy's like, you know, a master swordsman, like he's Yoda or
that was it. That was the other thing that I was going to mention too, is the fact that, you know, he finds out the dude's a Jedi master, so he goes off, locks a kid up in the wall or whatever, you know, and basically, right. And I mean, I will say, it was kind of cool when the kid came out. It gave me a very much of a I Am Legend 28 Days Later type of vibe where, you know, he came out and everything's all just destroyed pretty much. And the effect was actually kind of cool. I thought the effect that it gave me was like, okay, they did this pretty well. But yeah, I mean, okay, so he sees his dead Jedi Master in spirit who essentially knights him. And that's it. Now he can fight against this Inquisitor thing, and then all of a sudden the CO3 or whatever that other little droid is hops on his back, and now it becomes like, you know, that's where the anime really comes in, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, that part is totally, like, okay, I get it. Yeah, it's a total anime thing, and I get that. That was fine with me, that part. Sure. But yeah, the whole, like, okay, him looking all over the place, looking for, you know, a crystal, and then, you know, it's like, okay, use the Force. You know, it's just kind of like, all right, how? And then the whole professor, he's supposed to be this Jedi Master. I don't think this Jedi Hunter was a Sith Lord. So he can't beat one of these guys? Like, you're not even a Sith.
Yeah, I know.
Like, so I was just kind of like,
there were,
once again,
there was a lot of issues.
Glaring holes in this.
Well, so. And then of course at the end too, it's kind of like this thing that, you know, because they've been trying for it it seemed like a long time that they were trying to get life on this thing, on this planet or whatever. And all of a sudden, glass breaks, there's a tree, and oh, look, now there's rain. Now it's like, really? That's pretty convenient.
Yes.
I mean, the only
exactly.
thing I can think of is maybe the Jedi Master dying, and he's able to influence things now through the Force. And maybe the kid, actually, maybe that's the whole part, Pinocchio becoming the boy kind of thing. Maybe that does something. I mean, there are in anime, we'll put it that way. I don't want to say in the universe because that almost implies a little canon type stuff. But within this version, you can hang on to some of the things maybe that could explain this stuff, but still that whole ending like that, I'm like, I don't know, man. And then of course, right the battle, and yeah, there was just there were issues. But let me get to the many chats that have come in, mostly between Ronaldo and Dwight, and mostly Ronaldo actually. So Ronaldo was like, remember when I said episode 2 was my least favorite episode? Yes, I do. I take that back. I hated this thing. But then he goes on to say, but to be fair, we are not the demographic for this episode. This is really for young kids. Okay,
Yeah.
and I am trying to be a little bit careful about that because I realize that it's really difficult to criticize something that really wasn't intended for you, but I'm not even really criticizing it based on that. I'm criticizing it more based on its own merit. This is what you presented. I get it. It's for kids. And before anybody jumps back on the chat, yes, I realize a kid probably isn't going to analyze it to the degree that we are, but they might. Because, I mean, I did.
Well, my thing is like, if you're a child and you love Star Wars and you understand Star Wars, that's the thing. It's like it's one thing if you are a casual kid fan, like, oh,
It's
okay,
like
Star Wars
another.
is on.
Well, you talk about a
I know,
subcategory there. A casual
right?
kid fan.
Yeah. Okay, I can see them just like, oh, okay, cool. But if you're like kind of like, how you and I were like when I was like, 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, really into Star Wars. Okay. Because now it's going to make me have questions. Because
Yeah.
it's like, okay, well, this droid can be a Jedi. Well, can 3PO, or, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's going to make me question that. And it's going to, and that's the only part I'm saying is just that, although I see what they were trying to do, they were trying to do the whole Pinocchio thing. And I totally got that vibe. However, I just feel like something like you said, it broke its own rules.
Well, and I guess
And
if you think of it
that's
to that
what I had a
degree,
problem with.
and yeah, and I think that being that it's as outside as it is from, I guess what we would call the Star Wars universe proper. But it's true. I mean, they do have R2 units, or at least R2-ish units in there. So, yeah. I mean, you could see how that might play into it. Dwight basically says he's agreeing with Ronaldo that it's definitely for young people. Ronaldo says this is inspired by the Astro Boy anime, which I understand is for little kids. Yeah, well, it's not like I'm exactly up on that one. I am aware of it. Let me put it that way. I am aware of it. And yeah, I can see where that's definitely the case because the animation really is similar to that. And again, I was really, I like the animation of it. It was pretty good. Then he goes on to say the positive side is that for little kids, it's a good starting point to understand Star Wars. Maybe.
See, that's the part I have.
Yeah, I don't know about that actually. I might have to respectfully disagree on that one because
yeah,
I
because
think
now you're like I said, you're convoluting the lore at that point.
Yeah,
because you got Obi-Wan telling you, oh, and Yoda's like, the Force is in all living things, but then like, so you're saying a droid is alive?
Yeah, right out the
like
gate.
I say, yeah. So it's like, nah, and then yeah, you're keeping with the lore as far as the kyber crystal. Yes, the professor's telling him like, "Yep,
Dude, the
it's probably one of
Japanese
the
anime
Padawan's job."
studios, they love the Kyber crystal. That thing's been front and center in virtually every episode. Like, you want to talk about a Star Wars
Well,
concept that appeals to them? They're all over that.
you got to think about it because a lot of the even the anime stuff they
I
use kind
know.
of stuff
Yeah.
like that, like crystals, and so I mean it kind of goes with the whole theme for them.
I'll tell you
But
this.
uh, what's up?
Well, I think the proper thing, if you're talking about, if you want to introduce a kid to Star Wars, first of all, just show them A New Hope. I
Right,
mean,
the
I
rest of
was like,
us.
dude, I was 6 years old when I saw that movie. 6. I was like 3 or 4 months away from being 7. I instantly understood it. I mean, maybe not quite like I do now, but I mean, I
Mhm.
pretty much understood the more or less the premise of it. Instantly had my dad take me to a toy store and he bought me a figure. I mean, it's not beyond that. But if we're going to say something like, okay, what about a show that's aimed at kids to introduce them? I'd say Resistance.
Mhm.
Give them that, not this.
Yeah.
I would never try to introduce anybody of any age
Anybody.
to Star Wars with anything in Visions.
Absolutely.
That's Visions is the advanced level.
Yeah, that's just
you
when you
know?
just kind of. That's when you just playing around like, oh yeah, what if we did this? Just
Right. It's more like a
you
Marvel
know.
what if kind of thing, You don't really want to you don't really want to do that. Now he says little fun fact. The voice of TOB1 or Toby is Masako Nozawa. She is the voice of Goku in Dragon Ball Z. So we have Goku in Star Wars, which is cool. And I have to take your word for it on that one. Dragon Ball
That's
Z
sweet.
was one of the ones that I never really kind of got into. He says, well, the idea of a droid that wants to be a Jedi sounds cool. Yes, it sounds cool. It does. And again, when we're playing in this whole what if world, you have the more, what I would say, canonical what ifs types things, like what if Luke actually accepted Vader's invitation and did join the dark side? And then, of course, you have the more fantastical or whimsical versions, like, yeah, what if a droid became a Jedi? How bizarre would that
Now,
be?
in thinking about this though, I'll make an amendment to one of my statements. I can understand the whole dueling, the whole um Jedi Hunter thing. I can understand that. Only reason why I can do that is because of Grievous, and it's a droid. Like you could just input information into it.
Well, and not
So
only
as long as you
that,
just
but
input the
remember,
fighting styles into it, I
yeah,
mean,
and he didn't,
it's
it's not like he actually used the Force.
the Force. Yeah, exactly. So that's why I said, you know what, I can hang with that. But now if he started, using the Force to flip around or lift things up, and now I'm gonna have a problem.
But your point
But
still stands, though, because the older master kept saying, well, just use the Force. And it's like, dude, you're
yeah,
talking to a droid here.
it's like,
Hello?
yeah, he's crazy too. I see why he lost.
Well, here's something interesting, too. Ronaldo says, by the way, this is the worst Inquisitor I've seen.
Yeah, I
And I
mean, he
mean,
was kind of. I like the way he looked. He was cool.
yeah,
I
he
even like
looked
the whole
cool.
ship. Like it was like okay, like at first I thought it was supposed to be Vader.
Yeah, I did, too. I thought it was kind of a weird anime version of Vader
Mm,
or
Kylo or
something
something
like
like that.
that. Yeah. Now, here's something that Ronaldo says. Before I get to that, though, yeah, again, with the Inquisitor, I thought he looked cool, and I thought he did the job. I mean, he's not going to be, I'm not going to try to go find out his backstory unless you give me something, like either in later episodes or in season 2 of the show. So he says the Force is also in things like ships or rocks, so I guess it's okay. And that's true. Yoda did say that. Yoda did say that. I don't know.
Is it in? Is it in or does it surround it?
Well, that's it. That's what I was going to say. It's kind of like I think what Yoda meant was just sort of I don't necessarily think a rock creature could become a Jedi. Although, funny story, the heck was it? Was it a comic? I think it was like one of the High Republic things. There's like some rock that's like the co-pilot of a ship. It's like a sentient rock that's on the ship, and I think it's the High Republic second novel, the Claudia Gray one, because I'm in the middle of reading it still.
I think
Into
I
the
heard
Dark or
about
something.
that.
Yeah. There's like a sentient rock that's like the co-pilot that they can kind of talk to, but it doesn't, like, nobody else would see. I mean, they just see a rock there. So I guess if you can have a canonized sentient rock, can that rock become a Jedi? Food for thought. Then he says, I think the battle with the Inquisitor was not that bad. This is probably in response to something that we were talking about.
Yeah. I mean, it was cool. Like, I was just kind of like, okay, he went from not ever having a kyber crystal, never touching a lightsaber a day in his life. Now all of a sudden, you're like Master Yoda, you're flipping around and you're,
Yeah,
kicking the
and
crap out
again,
of this Inquisitor.
I don't think either one of us were necessarily saying the battle itself was bad. The battle itself was fine. It was
Yeah.
really
It's
more
just
yeah,
suspension of disbelief.
exactly. It's another thing that took me a little bit out of the story in the sense of, and again, everything was so expedient, right? Because you only have 20 minutes to tell this story. I get that. So you're not going to have time to build a bunch of stuff. In this case, you're not even going to have time for a training montage. But at the same time, you really, it's almost like you could do it in an expository way. Just have the old master dude maybe had said something like, well, I know you've been training since I created, that kind of thing. I mean, anything. Because it's true. It's kind of like, he knights him. The implication is almost that maybe he imbued him with power. I mean, that I can hang with, but I don't know. He says, also, a Force user with no arms seems interesting to me. Reminds me of Chirrut in Rogue One. I did actually think it was interesting when the old master dude said,
I'm
one with the Force and the Force is with me. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then Ronaldo also chats in, well, maybe it's not a good starting point for kids to understand Star Wars, but to have fun with Star Wars.
Sure.
And I could go along with that one. I can, and I guess it just depends on what it is that you're trying to do, because even though I totally get what you're saying, I could make the argument that, hey, I had fun with Star Wars with A New Hope and moving forward. But it is true, though, that there's enough stuff that's around. You also have the young adult novels, too. You have the comics. You have a lot of material now that you can use to have fun with Star Wars. I just think that in the case of Visions, especially where kids are concerned, now again, and this is something that I brought up about us, being that we're not as deep into anime as what I would say a anime connoisseur or a true fan, like somebody that is consuming this style all the time, there might be things that we're missing, like things that might take us out of the episode or out of a suspension of disbelief. For an anime fan, it might be a different story. And so if you have a kid that, was raised on this type of thing and really got into it, then yeah, you could make that argument. And there's no right or wrong to any of this stuff. I mean, it's all subjective.
Yeah, it's just all just to play around and have fun with it. So
yeah. I mean, it's cool. It's just, I don't know personally, though, if I were trying to get a kid into Star Wars, I don't think this is where I would personally start.
No, what would you rate this episode? Like, if you had to give it a letter grade?
Ooh. Yeah, I just have to pick up this curveball you threw me here. I don't know, probably like a solid. I'll go with a solid B. I'll go with a B.
Okay.
Because I don't necessarily think that it really failed. Again, I mean, it's funny because, and this is one of the reasons why I think starting with that Tatooine one where the kid wanted to start a band or something.
Mhm.
Starting with that episode, I started to watch them twice because I wanted to make sure that my feelings on it were
Clear.
accurate. Yeah. That it wasn't based on either expectations or whatever. And the reason why I'm giving it a B is because I'm giving it based on its animation style. I'm giving it based on the story that it had, because the story that it had I thought was good. It was kind of like what you said. I thought it could have been executed a lot better, because I could just as easily give this thing a C too.
Mm.
But there were a lot of things, in my opinion, that it got right. But I mean, we're not talking B. In fact, I'm going to say B minus. B minus.
Okay.
B minus is going to be my letter grade.
Gotcha.
Well,
for me,
I say, man, you can't be asking me that, and then you're just like, all right, well, moving on. Who do we got?
No,
it's not how this co-hosting thing works.
You get back here, you answer this question. No,
all of a sudden I see your thing freeze. You like hung up on the call.
I think, okay, this is how I'm going to grade it. Based upon its intent, I'll give it an A minus. What it was, its intent was spot on. What it was trying to do as far as putting Pinocchio into Star Wars,
yeah,
they got it right.
Absolutely.
I mean, they did a great job at that. Did I like that though? That's where I give it a C.
All right, so you kind of have like a two-part thing going. Well, if you average those out, we're talking like B minus here.
I know.
All right, well, let's see. Ronaldo says, have you seen Star Wars Hunters? No, I haven't. It's a mobile game, and there's a droid that believes he's a Jedi, and it looks cool. He has a lightsaber and everything. Well, it's kind of like what you pointed out, Daryl. I mean, Grievous had a lightsaber too.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's not unfounded, and like I said, it's a droid. You can teach them, anything, especially, if they have like a lot of memory and stuff. You can just input that crap into them, and boom.
Yeah,
there you
can,
go.
like you said, you could teach them all the fighting styles. You could teach them a lot of the stuff. I mean, obviously, they're not going to have the Force per se,
Right.
but I don't know. Yeah, Star Wars Hunters. I haven't checked it out. I mean, I've seen that there's a couple of mobile games that they have where they're different from the traditional console or PC games or whatever. And I know that they do a lot of they do the same thing that this is doing. They play a lot with Star Wars canon in those games. The platform, the normal platform, like your console and PC games, they try to be a little bit less drastic when playing with canon because they know it's a bigger audience. But the mobile games, they can get away with that.
Yeah, and those games are more canon. I mean, they're canonized as well, though. That's why they have to be so careful.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know. The mobile games probably aren't.
The mobile games probably aren't. Yeah.
No. So Ronaldo says, I'll give it a 3.5 out of 10. Ouch.
All right.
All right. Well, Dwight gives it a C minus.
Okay. I can see that.
Well, and that's only because of the animation.
The animation was really cool.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if he's giving it a C minus because of the
animation. I know, and I was about to say the same thing. It's like, well, wait a minute. Are you giving it a C minus because the animation you feel was bad, or because you feel the episode was bad, but because you like the animation, you're grading it a little higher? So in other words, would it have been a D? And then Ronaldo says, look, was it the worst Star Wars thing ever? I don't think so, but it wasn't the best.
Definitely, I would concur with that.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's just the execution. I mean, the execution of them trying to bring the Pinocchio story to Star Wars. I mean, that's what they were basically trying to do. It worked in that space, if I could use that. But I mean, as far as something that was really enjoyable, Not so much for me.
Yeah, and Dwight says it was the animation that brought it up, which is that was sort
I
of what we
figured that.
thought at first.
Yeah, just wanted
at
to make
first
sure.
glance. But yeah, you got to check these things out. You don't want to, you don't want to just be like, well, okay, that's what they think, and it's like, no, when you're chatting away, that would be bad.
Yeah,
I mean, I would.
I didn't want to speak for you, Chewie.
Right. Yeah, I would definitely. Yeah, I would agree with that. Where it's what they were intending to do was really cool. The execution, I don't
the
know.
Prequels.
Yeah. I mean, it really is kind of like that in a sense. Where once again, you have a cool concept, and this is why I had cautioned people when the script for Colin Trevorrow's Duel of the Fates movie came out, because everybody started, and we did a whole show on it, by the way. In fact, it's one of the most watched shows on this channel. So, that's one show that I don't have to encourage people to go back, because I mean, we get tons of views on that thing a week, but it was pretty much, would George Lucas's sequel trilogy have been better? And then, of course, I think that led into a discussion, and actually, we did do a show that was purely on Duel of the Fates, come to think of it. And I remember one of the things that we talked about was the fact that, okay, everybody's raving about, oh, they should have done this. It would have been way better than Rise of Skywalker, and on it goes. And on paper, I would agree with that. But you don't really know what would have happened once you put that thing on film. And that's the problem. The problem is how many times the prequel trilogy, and this episode even, subjectively speaking, but I think we're all pretty much in agreement in how we feel about it, that the idea was good, but the execution, not so much. And that's the thing you have to be careful, is that you can have a really good concept, but then when you do that, just kind of fall short. And I think that ultimately that's what happened here. Like I said, I'm glad I rewatched it, because I don't know, maybe I just wasn't in the mood. And I think that that's part of it, because, again, the fact that we're watching this in order because of the review. Let me ask you this. If we weren't reviewing this show, assuming you would have watched it at all, would you have watched it in order or not?
You talking about all of them, like the visions so far?
Yeah, like if you and I had just said, you know what, let's either, here's one, because I mean, I didn't even really intend on watching this, to be honest. Let's just say that instead of doing this week by week thing, we were just going to review the thing as a whole.
Oh, just like binge watch them all, and then
yeah,
I probably would have done that. I probably wouldn't have like once I saw the first ones. Anytime they have a bunch of Star Wars content like that anyway, where they just drop it on you, I'm going to watch them all anyway, just because, especially if it's good, I would have given it, a chance, to see where it would have went, but I probably wouldn't have finished it, honestly.
Well, I mean, if we were reviewing the whole thing, probably would have.
Well, if we were reviewing the thing, then I would have to. But I mean, if we weren't,
kind of like
I probably.
It's like,
if we weren't,
I swear, there's some Sundays where I'm just like, oh man, I gotta watch Visions for tomorrow's show.
Exactly. It's like, I hope this is a good one.
Exactly, right? Because that's the other thing too. Well, sometimes if it's terrible, it could actually be a lot more fun for the audience. But I know what you mean, because there's a lot of times where you're just kind of like, okay, how long is this thing? Yeah, because you're not in the mood, and that's it. Now, if I'm being honest with myself, whether if we were reviewing it, well, if we weren't reviewing it, once I started watching it, curiosity would have just made me watch the whole thing, but I may not have watched it all, at once. I mean, it might have taken me like half a year to do it. But reviewing the whole thing, if we were just going to review the whole thing as like a series, one episode, I probably would have started out with episode 1 and then maybe 2. And then I probably would have started looking at the titles that appealed to me. And I probably would have skipped around at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of those things that I'm kind of with you on that. Like, I don't think I could have sat and like if it was just up to me, just to sit and watch them.
Mm-hmm.
After the first couple, I probably been like, yeah, this is crap, and probably would have unless someone made me like, no, you got to see the rest because some of them do get cool, and I'm like, okay, you would have to kind of twist my arm a bit, but um, because we were reviewing them, I'd have watched them all at once. I'm like, okay, well, there are some good ones in here amongst the muck of the mire, so to speak.
Yeah,
But
and that's essentially what would have happened. I would have probably have watched like because there's some episodes even now, right, that I've been like, man, I'm really curious about this one. Like the next one, The
Mhm.
Elder. I've been curious about that one from the beginning, but I'm like, no, I gotta wait until So I probably would have done that. So no surprise, bunch of chats. Ronaldo says that's right. The ideas and stories were great. The execution, not so much. Dwight says I watched it in order over a 2-day period.
Mm.
That's interesting. And then he goes on to say, I only rewatched the ones that I liked, and that,
Right,
yeah,
naturally.
that's normal. Now this is funny and actually timely because Ronaldo says, but we can agree on one thing: it's better than the holiday special.
I would have to agree with you, Ronaldo. You're
Yeah,
absolutely
I would have
correct.
to agree with. But here's the thing. Here's the problem with that statement, though. The holiday special is so bad that it's almost like when you're watching it, you're more bewildered by it than anything else,
Oh
especially for the
yeah,
first time.
definitely. Yes, when I watched the holiday special, I ironically felt the same way I did when I first watched the first Visions episode. Like, what the heck is this?
Yeah, that's right. Well, and actually, if I'm not mistaken,
And I
was the
hated them
first
both.
time was the first time that you saw it when we reviewed it last year, or had you
No,
seen it before?
I remember you and I watched it before at work.
We did. Yeah, that's right.
That was the first time I
It
ever
might.
saw it because I remember you kept telling me about it, and you were just like, "Yeah, man, I'll just pull it up." And then because we had lunch, it was right before like a break or something. We had like
Yeah.
lunch, and we just
Yep.
sat there and I watched the stupid thing, and I was just like, "Oh my god!" He's like, "Yeah, man, you got to see this," and
That's
I'm just
true.
like,
It's kind of like if
"Yeah,
you're a Star Wars fan and you haven't seen the holiday special, it's like you have to.
yeah." This
And
be
it's
the please.
actually it's I mean, really, like tomorrow it'll have been a year, maybe not to the date, but the day before Thanksgiving last year, me, you, and Kazi sat down and did a
Hmm.
reaction. Um so then Dwight says Daryl essentially said I watched it because it was my job. Yeah. But here's something that's really sad about that. It's not like we're even really making any money off of this show. I mean, it's kind of like it's really more volunteer work than anything else, It's just if I could just put this on record, it's actually Ronaldo's fault. I mean,
It is,
it
and
really
I hold him
is.
personally responsible for this. But
Yep. I mean, it's Ronaldo's fault because we were actually looking for something to do on a Monday or whatever. It was like, oh, you guys should review Visions, and it was funny because I had actually done, or no, I don't think I actually did it. I was going to when the trailer first came out. I was going to do like a Facebook Live only thing and basically talk about, is this a good idea? Does the franchise really need it? That kind of thing. But I really had no intention
Mhm.
to watch it. Even though I am somewhat of a casual fan of anime, I still wasn't going to watch it. Because it just felt like it was too. I'm really kind of deep into that whole canon of Star Wars and all that stuff. I don't really like to mess with the what if takes and stuff like that on it, because for every bit of energy or whatever that I spend on that, then I'm not reading something or watching something that I would rather see. So,
Yeah.
time is limited, right? So that's the thing. Ronaldo says, for episode 7, I'll warn you. Uh-oh. It's my favorite episode, but many people think it's the worst one. It feels like a prequel era story.
Mm.
Well, I mean, I don't know.
Alright.
We like the story of it. It's execution. As long as it's not executed like the prequels, should be all right. Dwight says Lucas tried to bury the holiday special probably got ticked when Disney put it on their site for all to see. You know what? I was really shocked because I could have sworn that there was a clause in the whole sale that the holiday special would never be, I had heard that.
Yeah, displayed, yeah.
I mean, I don't know how true that is. And it could have even been true at once. Kind of like they're like, oh yeah, George, we'll take a look at your sequel trilogy ideas. And it's like right in the garbage can, Maybe that was the other thing.
I
like
don't alter it any further.
Exactly. Oh yeah, George, we won't ever air the holiday special. You're good, that kind of thing.
Wink.
Yeah, pretty much. Then Ronaldo's like, what can I say? I'm a dark side kind of guy. I understand. Right. And to that end, I mean, I think it's... So we're working on doing for Wednesday, because obviously during the holiday week, we don't generally do a Friday show. I mean, it really depends on the year. But one of the things that we started experimenting with last year, and it's a tradition I think we're going to try to keep doing, is that we pick something to react to, and that's what we try to do the day before Thanksgiving. So this Wednesday, 2 days from now, less than 48 hours, we're going to try to actually react to the Family Guy Blue Harvest A New Hope spoof, which also I must credit to Ronaldo, because I believe that was his idea. So we'll have to see. Because again, trying to get the digital copy and get all this stuff and have it be possible and play well and all that stuff. If something happens, if something happens and we can't, we'll figure something out. But either way, we'll be here Wednesday at 8. So, that you can rest assured. But we're definitely going to try to react to that, because that would probably be the most fun. And we'll see if we can get a special guest or two to try to react with us, because that's always even more fun. So we're working on all that stuff. So Dwight says, where can I find it? Never saw it. Are you talking about the holiday special? If he's talking about a review of the holiday special, it's on the channel. You can just, scroll through the videos and you'll see it. It was interesting. It was actually, it was pretty cool. And because I think it was already on YouTube, and because I think even YouTube's algorithm doesn't care, they didn't flag us. Like, we didn't get a copyright strike on it. I mean, it's still up there. It's still good. It's it was fun, and I'm hoping that, this year everything will be just as fun, because the whole reaction thing is is always a fun thing to do. Ronaldo says holiday special is not available in my country. Thank the force. Hey, man, but you know what? You can find it on... I mean, it's on YouTube. I mean, I guess it just depends, because I know there's different variations of YouTube, depending on the country, too. But if you get yourself a VPN, you can watch it. Oh, Dwight says a Family Guy episode.
Oh, well, that one, yeah.
Yeah, well, it's available.
A trilogy.
It's a trilogy.
Dwight.
Yep.
So they did for each... So they did Blue Harvest,
something Dark Side for Empire.
It's a Trap.
Yeah, and It's a Trap was Return of the Jedi. And our plan is for the next 3 years now. So this year will be Blue Harvest, next year will be something Dark Side, and then It's a Trap for the following year. We'll see if that holds. But you can find it, I think. It might be streaming. It might even be on Prime. What's the Prime? Hulu has all the Family Guys. They may have that one. I'm not sure. You can definitely still get the DVD or Blu-ray copies of it. And then Ronaldo's like, about the holiday special, it's so bad you can upload the whole thing on YouTube and Disney won't say a thing. The funny thing is, though, we did that. We did that before it was available on Disney Plus. So now I'm kind of wondering if they might try to clamp down on stuff like that now that they've officially released it, or if it's one of those things like, whatever, just put it on the channel, who cares? In the interest of being a completist. But all right, I think that's going to wrap up our show today. Let us know what you guys thought of episode 6, the TOB1 episode of Star Wars Visions. Obviously, we already know what Ronaldo and Dwight think, but what do you guys think? Leave it in the comments section below. Don't, of course, forget to smash that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit all the buttons except for dislike. That's the one you want to stay away from. And then don't forget, check us out in a couple of days, Wednesday, the night before Thanksgiving. Why go out? Why brave the weather? Why do all that stuff, right? Get yourself a pizza, sit down, and watch our reaction, hopefully, to Blue Harvest. So until Wednesday, I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.